Allergy season in Austin, but that's not going to keep me from getting through this NuVoodoo Live. I've been waiting for this session for, boy, I think it's been a month, Mitch, since we first strategized about how we'd introduce the exciting new ad tech that you're going to talk about today. And so I'm Mike O'Connor, and Mitch Schoenman is one of our premier provider specialists, another programmatic media specialist, just like Adam from last week's session. But Mitch's specialty is contextual. And I know that for those of you who are longer term viewers, know about some of our differentiating technologies. So for example, contextual video AI. This is where we crawl YouTube and programmatic video. We program the audio soundtrack so our physical therapy client can run into the right content. In this case, Bob and Brad, one of the most notable physical therapists that's on the internet. They even have a jingle about themselves. And that's the kind of specificity we've been able to apply to our connected TV and our programmatic video and YouTube walled garden campaigns using this ad tech. Well, that's a piece of the puzzle. And Mitch, I don't have to tell you that starting in, what was it, May of 2021 when Apple upended the universe? I think that's right, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, early May of 21 was when iOS 14.5 came out and changed the way that we could target users for forever, really.
Yep. And I imagine that because Mitch is our exclusive provider of contextual services for NuVoodoo clients, but Mitch does work with tons of high-end Fortune 500 companies with $1 million plus budgets. And I'm sure your phone rang that day, because, or at least that quarter, because suddenly some proven strategies weren't working anymore, right?
That's right. The phone started ringing that quarter. And then really since then, it started to ring more as it relates to contextual targeting and cookieless targeting in general, because privacy, as I think you're going to talk about, is becoming more on the mind of every single user out there. Some sectors of audiences more than others, but with GDPR and CCPA and all of the different walled gardens that are out there and everything that is challenging us marketers, people at least need to think about cookieless targeting as a part of their strategy.
That's right. And by walled gardens, Mitch is referring to the Facebooks and Google YouTubes of the world, the folks that have logins and have built platforms that attract enough critical mass. If you're a longtime viewer of our content, you know where the audiences like to go to consume. And that really upended Facebook and Meta, really to the point where they had to become more like TikTok as a result of that sunsetting of cookies and device IDs. And maybe just before we get into the research and before we get into what you're going to talk about today is, by cookies, we're not talking about a baked good here, right? This is old-fashioned ad tech that used to be really effective. Like if you ever went to a website and then suddenly found yourself for the next 10 days or so getting stalked by an advertiser, that was related to the site you'd surfed, that's called retargeting. Maybe why don't you give us just a quick little device ID, browser cookie retargeting 101s for the folks who may not have quite the digital ad buying experience in watching this video.
Absolutely. So from a high level, a cookie is just a user identification piece of code that can follow you around the internet. So like you said, you go to a website to buy a new pair of shoes, and then all of a sudden, every single website you visit in the next 10 days, you're getting served ads for that company or that pair of shoes. They're following you with a cookie. And I would say they absolutely used to be more effective, cookies did, but they're still effective if you're targeting audiences that have opted into that kind of targeting. Google keeps saying that they're going to get rid of the cookie, but they've yet to sunset it. So we'll see when they do. Until they do, though, cookies absolutely can still be an effective way to target users across the open web.
Yep. And that's why, there's an old adage out there, anything with a login wins, because once you have that login, you can then associate all sorts of other data, because that's probably the bigger piece. It's not the number of individuals that you target, but it's the qualitative attributes that you're able to associate with that cookie that made it so powerful, and why we have to find other ways to target people that we know are likely to be brand consumers. And that's just sort of a little hint about the ad tech that Mitch is going to walk us through here in a few minutes. But a little history lesson. We've been tracking through NuVoodoo's proprietary research with studies that involve between 3,500 and 5,500 consumers, generally speaking in the buying demographic 14-year-old to 54-year-old consumers. We've been watching this trend because when we're talking about cookies and mobile device IDs, we're really talking about privacy and the consumer's willingness to exchange kind of a little bit less privacy for more convenience or more relevance. And it has a lot of different functions, whether it's you trying to map your route from home to a specific unfamiliar location, to something like you kind of want to know about the sale that's going to be at Penny's, not to use an outdated expression. You might opt into a particular app's ability to track. Well, you can see we've been tracking things since the start of the iOS movement, which got a lot of publicity at the time. You can see we started at roughly 40%, 38% of our total sample were in the rarely to never category. So watch this blue rectangle at the top of each of these bars. And you can see every 6 months, as we continued our tracking study, the numbers grew and grew to the point, though, now where we've leveled off. And what we see is that, yes, people are still very concerned about their privacy and aren't willing to give this permission up to just any app. In fact, we've known that there's a direct correlation between the trust level of the app or the website or brand and the amount of tracking that they'll allow. But I think what's important to know is that no matter what, we've seen the leveling of that device ID cookie node never track me, Mitch, to the point where we see more permission in certain demographics, like we're showing you men in the millennial age, men, a really important advertiser demographic, that there's still going to be a big, huge chunk of folks that are okay with tracking. And for example, if you use Google Maps or Apple Maps to get from point A to point B, you're opting in to tracking whether you want to be tracked or not. And you're usually giving permission for those apps to share with other like and kind service providers. So in essence, there is always going to be an audience for that involves some aspect of cookie retargeting. And that's where I think the first of the two capabilities that you're going to introduce today. And just a reminder, I know I'm giving you a really big buildup here, but along with the video technology, which allows us to crawl audio content of videos to make probabilistic bets about where your ad makes the most sense to run. What Mitch is going to talk about are page-related variables, so text and images. He's going to discuss two things: page context AI and browsing audience AI. And I think that's where we're going to start first, Mitch. So maybe explain how browsing audience AI and cookies and contextual interrelate, because that's really kind of the sweet spot for this.
Absolutely. So the first solution we're going to talk about is a browsing audience, which essentially is a combination of contextual targeting and first-party data. So what it is we're going to build an audience of people that are consuming pieces of content related to contextual phrases that we build out. We're then going to collect those users as our own first-party data within the solution that you can leverage for targeting purposes. So you see, it's almost it is a second-party data solution where it's first-party data being collected in the solution that you can then leverage for your own targeting as the client. So
for us old school digital folks, this is a lot like search retargeting, but a much more souped up version of that.
That's exactly right. Very, very similar to search retargeting. You see here the in and out of context phrases, and we're going to do a really simple example that most people in the audience are familiar with. We're going to use real estate as a way to build this out so that you can get an idea for the in and out of context phrases. But we'll create a test audience name, and then I'm going to use a residential real estate example, someone who's looking to buy a home, because it'll give us the opportunity to use a very simple out of context phrase.
Yep, makes sense.
So we'll go ahead and we'll put real estate in here. We'll put home buyer. We'll put mortgage lender, things that are related to buying a home. But then in the out of context phrase, since it is someone looking to purchase a home that they're going to live in, we'll put maybe commercial. And that way, it's not going to build us an audience of people that are consuming commercial real estate content. Right. So what we're doing here is we're going to generate context. And what this is going to build for us is an audience of people that are consuming will apply the suggestions. Our AI will apply suggestions that will optimize for better performance, which is what you just saw there. But basically, When you build that out, you're going to have an audience of people that are consuming residential real estate information, content on the internet, and we'll collect that over a look back window that you can determine when you're working with us. So it could be 10 days, 20, 30, 90 days, whatever you prefer, we can collect during a look back window for audience size.
And Mitch, we should mention that this is nothing we're expecting our clients to do. NuVoodoo is a white glove, full service, managed services department with partnerships with folks who are even more expert. I'd like to refer to myself as a generalist. I understand enough of all of this to be dangerous, but when it comes to implementing this stuff, Mitch has a whole team of data scientists and digital ad placement veterans that come in and do this work for you based on the specs that you give us.
That's right. That's right. And so always happy to hear out needs assessments and help shed light where I can. And a lot of what I do, especially in our relationship, is in the contextual space. So this is, you're right, something we live and breathe, we do every single day. And you see here, after the context is generated, you're going to have these circles with words in them below. And the size of that circle is telling us how much content is available to collect an audience upon. So we could say, oh, wow, home buyers is a really large sector of people. We could actually hit this plus button or this negative button. We could take it out, put it in out of context. We could add mortgage to the in context. It's really simple and intuitive to use if you are using it self-serve. But again, we can absolutely manage this. And what we're going to do down here is very interesting. It's going to give us some example content that a user may be reading about. And on the back end, while we're setting up a campaign, we can actually edit this. So we could say, actually, this content isn't really relevant. It's not what we want to be serving ads upon. And we can alter that. Or we could say, yep, this is exactly what we're looking for. This is where we want to be placing ads and where we want to be collecting users from. And we can say, all right, we want a less or a smaller audience size that's more interested. So they're consuming really pertinent home buying residential real estate content. And we're able to collect them as audience members that we can then leverage for targeting with our campaigns. Or we could say, we're actually doing more of an awareness play and we want to increase the size of that audience, but the content that they're reading is going to be a little bit more varied. It's still going to be related to residential real estate, but it's going to be more varied than maybe someone who's trying to optimize for conversions. So in a nutshell, that's the browsing audience. It's first party data that we're collecting in a certain look back window that you can then leverage based on contextual phrases for your campaign targeting.
Yep. And so this is a way to reach people that we know have surfed content that's related to your brand. So it's kind of like building the same way you might tag your website, right? With that little pixel that allows you to know who's visited your site and then you can retarget them. But this is the version of that where it's people visiting any one of a number of pages or mobile apps that are related. So it's sort of like a first party on steroids. I guess a second party retargeting is sort of the way this works.
I like the way you described it. That's exactly right.
And so this would be the blended solution that allows you to reach with optimum efficiency because you know who these people are and what content they're consuming. And I should add, for advertisers that just service specific market, like some of our local media clients or regional department store chains, you're able to overlay all the normal geo and demographic targeting that you would anyway, so the audience can still conform to the way you buy media traditionally.
That's right. Yep. Demographic layering, geo layering, all of that is still available with the browsing audience.
Yep. And like anything else, the more narrow, you have to be realistic because the more narrow you get, the more precise, but the less potential reach. And that's where Mitch and his team are really good at sort of building that optimal trade-off between those variables. So that's the cookie meets contextual part. But then remember, there's going to be that 30 to 40% of the audience who is just not willing to give up their information for any convenience or ad relevance whatsoever. So we need a solution that's kind of like our video solution where it's all about finding the audience based on what content they're consuming in real time. And that's where this next one comes in. And I'm sorry, I have to use my cheat sheet to remind myself. This is called Page Context AI.
That's right. That's right. So Page Context AI, you're going to see a very similar setup to the browsing audience that we just went through. The difference is that with Page Context AI, we're going to generate a list of relevant domains to those in-context phrases that we can then serve to in real time. So with Page Context AI, we aren't targeting any specific users. There's zero data involved in this, no cookies.
Right.
It's completely data free, and it allows us to serve only to the domain. So
So
it's a
for the
great
top 10 hip radio station we've got in a large market that puts on an annual hip hop festival, we don't need to know whether or not they're Hispanic or African American who are into hip hop between the ages of 18 to 34. We're going to allow the content to determine the audience. And that's where this comes in, right? Yeah, and actually, I think you did this as our example, our annual festival for a large market hip hop station that we've been working with for the last decade.
That's exactly right. So you don't need to know all those demographics. You know that they're interested in the ad that you're going to serve based on the content that they're consuming. And so for that radio station, we can take a look at some of the most popular artists that they're playing on that radio station. We could put Drake in there. We could put Post Malone. And I'm just going with some of the artists that were on that list, Beyonce. And what we're going to do is then generate the context. And instead of those circles that you saw with the browsing audience that we're going to be able to collect users for, it's actually just going to give us a list of domains. And this, again, just like everything else when you're working with us, can be QA'd and changed and whitelisted and all of that good stuff.
Yep.
But what it's going to do is it's going to give us a list of these domains, and we'll say a user's reading this article on vibe.com about the Billboard winners in 2018, and we can serve them an ad about the concert or the festival that we're trying to drive traffic for. And so this is in real time serving to that user that's consuming content that we've determined relevant to the contextual phrases that we want to market for.
Yep. And your team is excellent about making sure, for example, when there's always clients that like to sign off on the specific pages. We know that if you use too few URLs, you're going to limit the reach. And you guys are really good about guiding clients, because this is not AI that's monitoring this stuff, right? It's because there's a lot of sensitivity, particularly with specific music genres, and a lot of the discomfort that's going on around the country right now between some of the school violence and some of the unfortunate racial animosity that we're seeing. You have human beings steering people away, steering campaigns away from that potentially risky stuff.
That's correct. One of the things I think is valuable for everyone to know is with contextual solutions out there, many times there's an AI that goes through and ensures that everything is brand safe. Your ads are being placed on domains that you want them to be placed on. And that works most of the time. But the issue is that sometimes you get an ad placed on a website that you don't want to be placed on, you don't want your brand to be associated with.
Yep.
That is not a problem with this tool, because like you said, a team of human beings is behind the scenes looking at every single placement, ensuring that it's brand safe prior to ever going live. So that is not an issue that we run into with this tool.
One of the things I wanted to ask you is, are we limited strictly to a list of websites, or if there's mobile apps, for example, that fit in a category that are on the exchanges and that accept programmatic inventory, does this allow, does it allow us to go into the mobile space at all, or is this exclusively desktop, laptop inventory?
So this will be desktop, laptop inventory. That's something we could layer on behind the scenes, but for building out just a quick contextual audience like you see here, it'll be just the domains that we specify.
But it's important to understand that these are just two tools among a whole suite of different strategies that we use. For example, you've got programmatic campaigns that can just target nothing but mobile phones, for example. There's exchanges that only deal with mobile inventory. So it's all about us layering on different strategies and tactics that will be efficient with your dollars so that you reach the most number of people with good, relevant frequency to have a campaign success.
That's exactly right. You think about this contextual tool, that's just one piece of the pie. Like you said, we can absolutely target mobile, we can target by device, we can target by all sorts of different things. But I think that we made the joke about Google not sunsetting the cookie.
Right.
But in reality, they really haven't yet. They've pushed it many times already. And so we think that the way that we kind of operate is that you should have a cookieless strategy. It needs to be a piece of the pie, but you also have all of the cookie targeting that you can do, the device IDs and everything like that still as an effective part of your strategy. And that effective strategy looks different for every single brand. So for some brands, contextual could be something that's super effective. For others, maybe not, but that's something that we work to determine together.
So in summary, for this particular suite of contextual solutions that NuVoodoo offers, we've got that audio crawling ad tech and actually that can crawl podcasts and anything else that's on YouTube, because there's a lot of podcast video now. In fact, YouTube is one of the premier places for people who like to watch podcasts. So between podcasts and video, whether we're using YouTube or crawling programmatically, and then where Mitch comes in is the two contextual solutions, the one that involves second-party audience, cookies, device IDs, a good potentially up to 60% of the audience. And then there's the pure contextual play that gets to that group, that 30 to 40% hardcore, who just don't allow, who put security and privacy over everything else. And so that's how we help paint a mosaic. And then we can fill in with these other solutions that Mitch talked to you about. The best thing that I like about our relationship, Mitch, is that you've never left me in the lurch. There has not been a client when we give you enough time, enough lead time, right? You're right there on the phone helping me walk them through the solution that you propose and answer any of the questions.
Yep. We can turn things around really quickly. Always happy to, as I mentioned earlier, listen to needs assessments and come up with media strategies and point you in the right direction for what solutions within the tool are going to be best for your campaign.
Now, I don't want to put you on the spot, but one of the other things that really impresses me about your outfit, and especially the data scientists that you have on your team, is the first party data solution. So if somebody has a database, some of the neat things we can do, like pushing to LiveRamp. You're the first company I've ever worked with that can get that done like within a business day. Most of the time you're waiting 7 to 14 days to get an audience populated. And that's really powerful when you need to have speed to market.
Yeah, for those of you out there that have worked with LiveRamp in the past, you're hitting your head into your palm right now, because you know how long it takes to get those matches back. Ours happens in 30 minutes to an hour.
Yep, that's amazing. You're like the Domino Pizza of first party data. So if you have an email,
marketing team.
if you have an email address list, and that's really all we need, though we'll take other data variables. The more data variables, the more comprehensive it is. We load it into our system. Mitch finds the matches, and then we can go stock them with all these different strategies with your advertising. So now you're dealing with people that you know are your best prospects. So we'll talk more about that and have you back for another 20-minute session. Does that sound good?
That sounds perfect. Yeah, I would love to.
So if you ever want to reach out and speak with Mitch, you can do it by contacting us here at NuVoodoo. Tell me more at NuVoodoo.com. Thanks so much for your time, Mitch. It's been great having you.
Thank you, Mike. Great.
NuVoodoo builds digital products and conducts research and marketing campaigns for clients.
It's easy to get in touch. Drop us a line at tellmemore@NuVoodoo.com.